One more. And then 3 more tomorrow. In case some of our audience members need to leave early, I just want to remind everyone that we will not be having any deliberation this evening. When our next interview concludes, that will conclude our meeting for this evening. We will hold all deliberation on next week on the evening of the 18th during our special meeting. So board members, please remember, we're not deliberating. We will have all of our deliberations during that meeting on the 18th. So, our final interview for this evening will be with Mr. Benjamin Shuldiner. Welcome. We're waving.
Oh, we're waving. Mm-hmm. Good evening.
Good evening.
I will shake your hand. Wonderful. Terrific. Thank you very much for having me. No, I was the youngest principal in America, but that's a very fleeting title, as I am now much older.
Thank you. Mr. Shuldiner, we've had the opportunity to review your resume. Please tell us how your background and experiences make you a good fit to be our next superintendent.
First of all, good afternoon and good evening to all the community as well as the board. It's really an honor for me to be here. To walk through my resume and to tell you about who I am, I think is helpful because I might be a little bit different than what you're expecting. I'm an outsider. Not from Michigan. I've never been a superintendent before. Those are all things that I think are, valid critiques against. But that everything I've done in my career has been to move students towards success. When I first started teaching, I worked in a school in Brooklyn that at that time was the second most dangerous high school in the city of New York with the #1 felonies in the city. And in that first year, I was able to, with my students, double the passing rate on the state exam. The next year, I was asked to chair the social studies department, and I said, I'm not going to chair in my second year. How about we do this collectively? And I got 2 more people on the department to be part of the basically the leadership. And in that year, we doubled the entire department's passing rate, and I helped to triple the passing rate of my students. After 2 years of teaching, I was asked to consider to be a principal. And at the end of my 3rd year, I was able to coalesce parents and teachers and students to create a school. We came into a building that had a 23% graduation rate. It was a school that was not doing very well. And we were able to come in, change things around, start something fresh, and in our first graduating class had a 98% graduation rate. Everything I've done in my career has been about putting students in the center and getting them to succeed. And so, though I've never been a superintendent, after being a principal, I was asked to come to Hunter College, which is part of the City University of New York system, which is a great public institution for teacher education, to run their leadership program. So what I do every day is help support the education of 200 folks who are about to be superintendents and principals. So I spend a lot of time working with those folks. But another thing that being a professor afforded me was that I was then able to be on the New York City School Board. I will say that your office is much nicer. We didn't have the nice name tags that you guys do, but I was not only able to be on the school board, helping to oversee the largest school district in the country, but also was able to be the president of ASCD, which is the largest education professional organization in the country. And again, the things that I've done in my career, when I became a board member of ASCD, it was losing $10 million a year. It was losing membership. After my presidency, we became profitable, started increasing our membership, and have really changed things around. So I think what you look for in my career is every place I've been with people, with a team, collectively, with the community, with teachers, with everybody, we've been able to take incredible leaps and bounds for student success. And that's why I'm here, because I would be incredibly honored to work with you and the community to making things even better for the students of Lansing.
Thank you. Please share an example of a time you have led a sustained multi-year improvement initiative. Be specific regarding the situation, the task at hand, your specific role, and the outcome.
Sure. We'll start with being a principal. In 2003, we created a district public school within a larger high school that was being shut down. The larger high school, as I said previously, had a 23% graduation rate, and in 2003, they didn't take in a ninth grade, we did. So what was happening was the school was phasing out, and we were phasing in. Same students, same community, even the same teachers in some respects. Although teachers were given the option to be a part of the new school, and some decided to stay, some didn't. And walking into a building that had decades of low performance, being able to say to parents, you should send your children here. This is the best thing for them. Being able to say to teachers, this is what we're going to be able to do. And in those 4 years, we started with that ninth grade, went all the way to 12th grade, and again, as I said, had a 98% graduation rate. And that sustained for all 10 years of my principalship, I guess is the way to say it. And the question, of course, that follows is, well, how in the world did you do that? Well, the most important thing is that we did this collectively, that we worked with the community, with parents, with teachers, and we always had this hardened belief that all students can succeed. It wasn't just some, fancy thing on a wall, but it was this absolute belief. Something as simple as you never ask a child, are they going to go to college? You say, what college are you going to? You change the narrative so that when you are working with students, when you're working with families, you're not coming from a deficit model, but you're coming from a strengths-based model. We did things like creating an advisory system where every student had one adult that followed them for all 4 years. It could be a teacher, it could be a custodian, although that kind of broke the union rules, but they didn't care. It could be a secretary, it could be a school aide. Every child had an adult that was going to follow them for 4 years and was going to move them towards success, and that's what worked. We also, of course, and this is something I speak about a lot, is we had what we would call love and accountability, is that everything we did was always focused on the student's going to succeed, but we're going to hold you accountable. I know that there are 15 other questions I need to get to in the next 47 minutes, so I'm not going to necessarily go in deep. I'm sure we're going to get to those things. But the very specific thing is you have a very clear vision, a very clear focus, you articulate those things, you say things like, we're going to have a 95% graduation rate, we are going to have a 95% proficiency rate, and then you start to build that, and you get the entire community to believe you, and you work incredibly hard, and you make it happen.
Managing vision and purpose involves anticipating future trends, creating a compelling vision, and communicating that vision. Describe a situation that conveys your capability in this area.
Sure. So when I got on the board of ASCD, as I said, it was losing about $10 million a year. It was kind of going all over the place. It's this 75-year-old organization with over 100,000 members. It's the most important kind of education professional organization in the country, but it had lost its way. You had to figure out, what are we going to do as an organization? What are we going to focus on? And so what I was able to do with the board was to create a very clear vision where we tripartited it up, where we said, look, what are we going to focus on? We're going to focus on conferences, we're going to focus on publications, and we're going to focus on membership. And so by getting rid of the noise, by saying, look, we're not going to do everything for everybody, we were able to focus on the vision. We were able to buy into that vision. And literally what it took was meetings till 1 in the morning. But you want to make sure that you're always articulating a very clear vision. And so what ended up happening was ASCD goes from losing $10 million a year to being profitable, goes from kind of getting rid of membership to now increasing membership. So you also not only say what are our kind of visions and our goals, but you also kind of hold yourself accountable. So if you're going to increase membership, then that's your focus. If you're going to have better conferences, you need more people at conferences. If you're going to have more publications, you're going to have better books and sell. That way, you can be very, very clear about what you do. But the big question in terms of how do you do it by co-constructing this together. This isn't about I. There's no I here. This is about we. What are we going to do as an organization? So if we're talking about being a superintendent, the question is, what are we going to do as a district? What are our goals? And then the job of the superintendent is to, with love, have accountability. Make sure that you're holding folks accountable to doing that, giving them all the supports in the world that they need, but then having honest conversations by saying, you know, you came up with these goals. This is what you said. It's October 3rd. That's not where we are right now. What can I do to make this better? And if we can't make this happen, maybe we need to readjust things. So it's always about being very clear, but co-constructing things together and then focusing on the accountability structure.
Please tell us what the term culturally competent means to you. Give us an example of how you demonstrate this characteristic and your experience in bringing a diverse group of people to consensus on a difficult issue.
Sure. Well, having spent most of my career in Brooklyn, New York, diversity is not only in our blood, but it's something that we value very, very deeply. And so when I was a principal of a school that was 99% students of color, when the staff was majority folks of color, the idea isn't about creating a place that is culturally responsive. The idea is about being of a community and knowing the culture. You don't come in and dictate how people are. You don't come in with your own preconceived notions. What you say is, hi, I am of service. Tell me what you need. Who are you? How can I be helpful to you? What I know about Lansing, and I got here early, I went to a couple of the high schools. I saw your softball team. They were much better than my softball team. What it's about is being responsive to the people that you serve. Never being arrogant, never saying that you know better. It's about how can I learn so that I can be of service to you. And culturally responsive is understanding where your students come from, where your family comes from, and where the community comes from. And it's hard sometimes because the way that many of us went to school was built in a community of a history that was very different than what we are now. You know, there's this, this will be a little bit of a tangent, but there are times where students who will feel that they are not being listened to, that they are not being heard. A teacher will, make fun of their name, or they'll say something that, they don't understand. And all you can think of is, wait a second, can anybody here spell Tchaikovsky or Dostoevsky? And yet somehow we understand that names and histories are expected from a certain culture and a certain understanding. And that culturally responsive is really not about being responsive to this idea of culture. It's about being responsive to the people that you are serving and to put away preconceived notions of what is expected and to know who the community is that you are serving.
Tell us how you maintain visibility and accessibility for staff, parents, and community groups.
I try to be as present as I possibly can. The first thing I ever did when I was a teacher was I gave everyone my cell phone number. And the students went nuts. They're like, we're just going to crank call you. And I said, no, you're not. I trust you enough to give you my cell phone number. And nobody ever crank called me. You, as a superintendent, are the heart of a district. You should go to all of the games. You should be at every school. I mean, there's 25 buildings in this Lansing School District. You should be at every one of them at least once a month. There's no question that the job of the superintendent is almost to be the biggest cheerleader there is. But you also have to be there on the ground. You have to do walkthroughs. You have to be kind of service and of the community. everything I've ever done in my career is to be present. I would even, as crazy as it sounds, I would like to teach a class. I think that there are ways that a superintendent can be part of the learning in different ways that can show that you can model what's great. I would always be, working with the cabinet, be it a formal cabinet like principals and deputy superintendents, but also with the community. The job of the superintendent is to always be there, is to always be a part of the culture and the society in which you serve. I mean, everything from having office hours to visiting on site. Look, the folks like teachers and community members, you have to go to them. You can't expect them to come to you. They're busy. The superintendent is the one that needs to go out there and support what they can. I would have, student councils. There's so many things that you can do, but the most important thing that I could say is the proof is in the pudding. Everything I've ever done in my career is to be in the community and of the community. It's empty phrasing to say I'll have an open door policy. What does that mean, right? Everybody will say that, of course. I hope all the three people behind me said that too. But what it really means for me is you will have my cell phone number. You will know where I live. I will be in every school at least every month, that I will be walking the streets with the students. I'll be always at a school for, early morning administration. There's always things that a superintendent can do. Sending emails, I can do that later. Taking phone calls, I can do that later. But during the time that students are in school, the job of a superintendent is to make sure that that time is precious and being used well. And one of the best ways to do that is to be in those schools.
Often we learn from successfully facing challenges or experiencing mistakes or failures. Please share a time when this was the case for you. What did you learn from the experience, and how did you apply what you learned?
I've made so many mistakes in my life. It's a great question. So hiring. Hiring is a really important thing. You always want to make sure that you are asking the folks that you're hiring to really be part of a community. And when I was a principal, the hiring was always done by a committee. I was never the vote. It was always the faculty and the students and the parents, actually. They all had votes, not me. And there was one time where we had two incredible candidates, and we were split. We've never been split before in our career. And so it was split pretty much 50-50, and we started debate back and forth. And we went with the one that made us feel safe. There was a candidate that made us feel safe. And it was the wrong decision, and we regretted it. And I think what that taught us all, and really me, was sometimes you need to be willing to take a risk for something that's even better. That it's okay to fail, but if you're trying deeply and you're trying desperately to do what's right, that's really helpful. And so in this one instance, bless you, and this was one of the early times in my career, it allowed me to say, you know what, it's okay to try and fail if you're trying to do what's best for kids. Don't play the safe route. Don't just say, oh, this person will be okay, and you know that. What about the person that could be a star? And how do you get those people to be part of your community? And so to this day, I think about that always, about what decisions can I make with my team, with a collective, that's going to be about the greatest rather than the safe.
Please describe how you would work to create a learning and working environment that is welcoming, inclusive, and increasingly diverse. How would you make sure that this is supported across the district and community?
Well, certainly in terms of welcoming, the leader, the superintendent, will always be a model that people look towards. If you're a teacher and you see your principal once a year, you're going to remember that interaction. If you're a teacher and you see the superintendent once a year, you're going to remember that interaction. The principal has to be the model for everything. And so to be open, to be warm, to be everywhere, to invite folks over, to host events, all of those things are about being welcoming. But you ask about diversity, and that's a really important question, is that typically what happens in conversations about diversity is people say, well, we told people there was a job, and well, only this group of people applied. It's not our fault. It is your fault. What you need to do is to make sure that you go into the community and make folks safe enough that they feel that they can apply for jobs or that they can be part of the community. If you see that there are certain percentages of certain groups of people that are always in power, if you see that there's certain groups of people that are always making decisions, that sometimes feels like a barrier. And so you as a district have to go above and beyond so that people are so thoughtful about what it means to be diverse and then to be supported. There's so much research about trying to get folks to come into a community where they don't necessarily feel that they have the power. And even when they're there, they feel put upon. And the ways that you do that is to create supportive structures, that you have coaching, you have mentoring. There's all these things that you can do. If we're talking about new teachers, if we're talking about parent organizations, if we're talking about student organizations, everything we do from a district needs to say the outcomes are what matter. And if we see that there's a preponderance of a certain group of folks in power, we need to address that. If we see that there's a preponderance of a certain ideology in power, that we need to address that. And it is our job to look not just on the inputs, but on the outcomes. This is a little bit of a different way of answering this question, but if you want diversity, which in and of itself is a good, then you need to make that as a goal. And you need to do what you can. You can't just put up your hand and say, well, we tried, or we told everybody about it. You need to figure out ways that you hold yourself accountable to do that, and that's by going into different communities, supporting different communities. There's a litany of things like that. But sadly, in education, this isn't Lansing. This is education around the world. We focus so much on inputs. Well, how many professional development hours did you do? What curriculum are you using? What are we doing? Great. Those are all fine. But we rarely say, what's the output? Do you have a diverse staff? Do you have kids that are passing state exams? Do you have a higher graduation rate? Those are the things that we need to reconceptualize as how we hold ourselves accountable. Not the inputs, but the outcomes.
How do you recruit, develop, and lead a management team? Give us an example of how you've done this in the past.
So, I've always believed two things. One is I'm not the smartest person in the room, and so I need to always find the folks that are better than me, and to be humble and grateful enough to look for the skills that I don't have. And the other thing is that when you create a leadership team, you actually give people power. You go out and you're the Pied Piper. You sell a dream. I mean, literally, when I was starting the school, I went through neighborhoods and knocked on doors and said, please send me your children because it's going to be great. When I was on the school board of New York, which is a whole other story, which we can talk about, we'd go into the community and say, look, what do you need so that you don't have to come in angry? Building the team is about having a vision, being clear about that vision, but then also making sure that other folks can have their voices heard too. And so here in Lansing, the first thing I would do is just start asking, who are the best people? Who do you got? What's going on? Now, I've been lucky enough that in every part of my career, I've had people follow me, be it when I was teaching, be it when I'm a professor, be it on the school board. A lot of folks seem to want to follow me, which is, I'm honored. But you have to make them feel safe. You have to tell them that you've got their back, right? The worst thing is when you have a leader who then brings people aboard and say, oh yeah, no, you screwed up. I'm going to throw you to the wolves. I'm always wrong, not anybody else. That's on me. And when you create a sense of safety for your people, they want to work for you. And they're not even working for you. They're working for the students. They're working for the district, and they're part of your team. I'm lucky enough that I have a tremendous Rolodex in terms of everything that I've done from, ASCD to I do work around the world in India and Norway. It's not stuff that we're going to talk about here, but, I consult around the world with school districts large and small, and that happens because people really like working with me, and they see that everywhere I go, students have success. So if I'm honored enough to be the superintendent of Lansing, the first thing I would do is talk to the folks in Lansing and talk about who the great people are here. And if there are others that want to come to Lansing, that's great. But there's always homegrown talent. There's always people that can lead. There's always people that know the district certainly better than an outsider. And then it's about making them feel that their voice is heard, that they're protected, and that when bad things happen, I take responsibility for it and make sure that people feel comfortable in their own making mistakes.
Describe how you go about engaging and affirming staff members.
I mean, everything from the little stuff like, I love these postcards that I always did, and this is in everywhere I go, is every week I'll write 3 postcards, certainly when I was principal, to staff members or even to students about something that they did great that week. And empty praise is a waste, right? Don't ever say to somebody, great job. What does that mean? For what? You want to say, great job for differentiated instruction, great job for supporting these students, great job for being at the parent-teacher conferences, whatever it is. Throughout my career, I always make it a point to thank everybody, to praise folks, but you have to praise them for specific things because they then need to know how to repeat the behavior. If you just say great job, it's a waste of time. So, everything from postcards to note cards to birthdays to always having Friday nights where people can come out and have a drink, not the students, but, always having a place where people can feel social and supported, but also treated like a professional. Look, I go to the hospital when my people are sick. I go to the baptisms and the brisses. There's so many things that you can do to show that you care. I mean, I once fixed somebody's flat tire, right? What do I care? Like, those are the kinds of things that you should do as a person, let alone as a leader. And so you affirm the faculty. I mean, teachers, all of the research is clear. Who is the most important person for student success? It is the teacher in the room. End of story. End of story. So your job as superintendent is to make sure that your teachers feel supported, feel praised, and are doing the best job they can. But it's more than just faculty. It's community. It's students. People need to walk into school saying to themselves, I am so happy I'm here. This is my second home. This is where I want to be. And the superintendent can create that culture that allows people to say, I'm part of the Lansing School District. How wonderful is that? And you do that by, whatever means necessary, be it, letters to file, is it parties, is it creating, employees of the month, whatever you want. And again, like I've said before, it's not even your decision. Sit with your faculty and say, what do you want? How can your lives be better? Sit with students. I mean, if they say, I don't want any homework, well, that's on them. But, you sit with students and you say, what's going to make things better? You sit with the community and you say, what's going to make things better in Lansing? You listen and then you act. And that's how you do it.
How do you go about making decisions on controversial issues?
It's a great question. Moral fortitude. You have to be okay with doing what's right, even if it costs your job, even if it is unpopular. Let history sort it out. But I'm a professor, and the class that I teach, one of the books that I assign is about moral leadership, the moral leadership of schools. I always have to think when you're making a decision, what is best for children? That's it. And you can answer that question. And when you make decisions, when students are at the center, you're going to do what's right. If it means you get fired, you get fired. If it means that it's unpopular, it's unpopular. But I'm always willing to take whatever sort of decision for children. Even when I was a principal, I remember, I got some pushback about certain things that I was doing. And I said, but don't you think this is the best thing for kids? So for instance, in New York City, little bit of a digression. There's a rule against cell phones. Okay, fair enough. But when students are coming to school through neighborhoods that they definitely want cell phones so that they can call for help and that they can call their parents, or they're leaving school late at night and they want to make sure that they're in contact, the right thing to do is to make sure kids have cell phones. So is there a middle ground? Absolutely. We created cell phone lockers outside of the school so that they could check their phones in. Now, the police department, the fire department, the chancellor, everybody said, you can't do this. I said, why not? What's the best thing? No cell phones in the class, I understand that. But give the child the ability to be safe when they're walking through the streets. And after 6 months, the chancellor's office said, Ben, we're not saying yes, but we're not saying no. I said, great, let's do it. We're going to make it happen. And so if you keep what's right for students at the center, you're going to make the right call, even if it is tough for you.
Tell us what budget development process you use and how you gain broad support for the final result.
So a super fair question. I even thought I would ask the question of me as well. So in New York, we don't really have the budgets that school districts do, like in Lansing, where you need to get things voted on and you want to pass this. But certainly my experience of both being the president of ASCD, I also was on the pension fund board managing $160 billion. I can certainly assure you that managing money is fine, but the most important piece of this question, I think, for the district is how do you get the community to buy in that they want to spend money on the school district? And so the question is, you need to make a value proposition to the community that says your tax dollars are really working. And it is, and even though we think, hey, everybody should give us money, it's a school district, it's your job to create a narrative that says every dollar that you're spending is worth something. So you want to be specific. If there's going to, and also one of the things that's incredible, and I'm so appreciative of Lansing, is the new budget line that you have, the $70 million. I mean, how amazing is that you're going to be able to use that to help the school system. But what you do is you say, hey, community, I know we all care about education, but if we're going to ask for one more dollar from you, this is what it's going to go to. And you go door to door. You have, I mean, really, like you make sure that every single person in the community knows why they're voting for it. I mean, I would knock on every door I could. I would bring as many people with me as possible. But you need to make an argument. There's a great book called Bowling Alone by a guy named Robert Putnam, and he argues that people don't join things anymore, Rotary Club, Lions Club, things like that. And one of the rationales was that those organizations didn't stay relevant because they weren't making a value proposition to you. School systems are the same way in some respects. Why should I continue to give this money? What change have you done? What good have you done? And it's our job as a district to go to the community and say, this is what your money's for. This is how it's being used. This is how wonderful it is. And really make it about kids and make it about the story of the district. And if you do that, great. If not, they're going to vote against you, and then that'll be a problem. And they have every right to.
What does an effective relationship between the board and superintendent look like, and how do you cultivate such a relationship?
I serve at the pleasure of. I mean, I think that the great thing about a school board is you all wanted this. You're not, as far as this is not LA where they get $125,000 to be on the board. This is a place where you said to yourself, yeah, it's $125,000 plus $50,000 if you can prove that it's your only salary. That's how much a school board member in LA makes. You, on the other hand, you wonderful, terrific public servants, you're doing this because you care, because you want to be here. And my only job as a superintendent is to work collectively with you to create that vision. You're doing this because you want what's best for kids. I or anybody in this seat is doing this because they want what's best for kids. And it's about sitting down and creating language that we can all agree to. Look, the superintendent, any superintendent should realize that they serve at the pleasure of the board. And that relationship is paramount. This isn't about my ego. This isn't about how I believe the Lansing School District should be. And it's not even so much about just the board. It's about what we all as a community want for the best for kids. And so, you're a board, I would want to have dinner with every one of you. I would want to have a drink with every one of you. I would want to know why you ran. Why are you here? Why are you suffering the slings and arrows of sitting as a board member? Because you have a passion for children. I have a passion for children. And I know that there's a way that you can work that together. And look, will there be discussion and would there be disagreement? Sure. And I would hope that, not that you would defer to me as the quote-unquote education expert. That's garbage. But I would hope that I would be able to explain my point of view well enough that it at least would make sense. And if you choose to go against it, you go against it. But I think what happens with a lot of superintendents is they'll come in and say, I'm the education person. You should listen to me. Well, if you can't make an argument as to why you should listen, then you shouldn't listen to that person. It's really important that the relationship is of mutual respect, but also understanding that education, unlike, let's say, brain neuroscience, I would hope that whatever decision I would want, we could collectively talk about and we could agree to. There should be no reason why we wouldn't be on the same page if we're always holding, kids at the center. So, yeah, and I would look forward to, going out to dinner and learning why you guys are all on the board.
Tell us about your experience in the development and implementation of one specific program change or initiative. What processes did you use, and how did you involve others?
Sure. They're great questions. So currently, I'm the Director of School and District Leadership, where I oversee a department that is training about 200 folks to become principals and superintendents. Higher ed, even more so than K-12 education, is broken. We spend a lot of time talking about what in theory works, and rarely do we talk about what actually works and are hands-on. And so for years, higher ed is taught in a way where this is what we think should happen. We're going to give you ideas about leadership, about being a superintendent, about being a principal. And about 3 years ago, I sat with the faculty and I said, well, how about we just radically redo this? Let's put students at the center. Let's rethink what it means to take college classes. Let's rethink what it means to get your leadership degree to be a superintendent. Let's say, what would we do if we wanted to make sure that everybody who graduated from our program was ready to be a superintendent, ready to be a principal? And it was not easy, because higher ed is a whole other world, right? I mean, but when we said, no, what would be best for our students? We completely revamped the program. And so now, if you're taking the master's degree to become the school and district leader, in the first semester, the coursework is focused solely on moving students in your district towards success, where you literally, your assignments are taking students, being in classrooms and trying to get them to pass, or whatever the success metric is. In the second semester, you're taking teachers and working with teachers so that they can move students towards success. In the third semester, you're looking at systems at a school level to move the teachers towards the students towards success. And in the fourth semester, you look at the district rules. How can you move entire systems in the district level to move school level, to move teachers towards students towards success? That was radical. So radical that some people said this was nuts. The really wonderful thing is that the state of New York gave me $500,000 because they thought it was brilliant. And they said, look, this is what we want now for you to lead superintendent training and principal training in the state. And again, why does this work? It answers all the questions. You focus on what's right for students. You have a very clear idea and vision as to what you want to do. You bring people towards that vision by going to them and saying, why are you in this? Oh, right, to get students to succeed. Well, let's rethink every system we have. Does that do that? And sitting in a classroom for 3.5 hours listening to somebody talk is probably not going to do that. And so that's the same thing when we're talking about being a superintendent, being a principal, being a teacher. If we say, what's our motivation? Getting kids to learn, having them succeed. Then we can rethink every structure that we do so that it follows that. And if you know that they're there for the right reason, though it's difficult, they will be very willing to have that conversation. Your job as leader, superintendent, whatever, co-creator, is to give them enough time to make them feel comfortable enough and to make sure that they are supported enough that they're willing to go outside of their comfort zone to do what's right for children.
What unique skills or experience do you bring to this position, and how will the Lansing School District be served by this?
I have a pretty good jump shot. I think that I've done a lot of different things. Everything from teacher to principal to school board member to president of the largest educational organization in the country to being somebody who works in school districts in India, in Norway. I have not been a superintendent, it's true. But the last 6 years, all I've done is support superintendents in making their school districts better. And it's time for me to get off the bench. I really like being a professor. It's a really great job. But it's time to get off the bench. And the Lansing School District, this is the first job I've applied to in 15 years. Because when this job came up, I couldn't think of a more perfect place to be. This is a district that cares deeply about its students, that has a wealth of opportunities. It's the right size. There's so many good things going, and I think that my skill set, my ability to work with people across the world, really, diverse, different languages, different backgrounds. Every place I've ever gone, there's always been success and large success. We're not talking about incremental success. And I think that I have an experience of looking at different things. The work in India is fascinating and allows me to think differently. The work in Norway is different and allows me to think differently. Having been a school board member of the largest school district in the country allows me to think differently. Being part of an organization, being a principal, a teacher, all of those things, nobody else has that. Now, that doesn't mean you have to like that. I mean, look, you should absolutely hire somebody else if that's not interesting to you. But everywhere I've gone with this kind of multiplicity of ideas, I think is why it makes sense for Lansing to, and I'll be honest, to take a risk. Does the Lansing School District want somebody that's not from Michigan, that's never been a superintendent? Are you willing to take that risk in order to do something really, really different and quite possibly something super special? I could totally understand going with somebody that's a local superintendent. It makes sense. But when you look at where I've been and the things that I've done, taking a school from a 23% graduation rate to a 98% graduation rate, getting kids to triple the passing rates on test scores, all those kinds of things, I think there's a possibility that we can do something pretty great. And if not, I completely understand. You guys have a tough decision to make.
Tell us how your previous professional experiences in education have influenced you as a leader.
You got to listen a lot, and you have to be humble a lot, and you have to take really good care that the old adage of God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them accordingly is true. There's so much that you can learn by listening, but it's also about being creative and about doing things sometimes a little differently. Kind of an interesting story I can tell you is the work I was doing in India. There's a school district. There's a new federal law called the Right to Education Law. And the Right to Education Law says that everybody has to have a school within a kilometer of their home so that you can walk to school. Makes sense. But one of the weird things about that is that there's a lot of schools that just have one teacher. And that one teacher has to run the school all by themselves. And so the there's all these other issues that came along with having these single teacher schools. The teachers were actually having to go buy the food for the lunch. They had to do all of the paperwork, and things weren't working very well. And so I was asked to, I was brought in, and I said, I don't know anything about the Indian school system. Like, tell me, talk to me about these things. And they explained and explained. I said, well, how about we could just hire one person to do the food deliveries for all the schools in the district? There's 8 schools. It would cost almost nothing. And that saved 2 hours of time for the teachers every day times 15. Now you say, what do I learn about leadership? It's just being humble enough to sit literally on a floor that has dirt on it, listening to the teachers' issues, which was shopping for the food, which nobody had asked them about why they were unable to do their job because it was spending an extra 2 hours going to the market, and just saying, you know what, I bet you we can figure out a way to make this better. And sure enough, with a little bit of money, we then freed up the teachers in the schools 2 hours every day to work with kids. Those are the kinds of decisions that need to be made. Those are the kinds of things that you can do if you're a leader who listens and takes thought as to what's best for the teachers so that it's best for the kids, and not poo-poo and say, well, your job is to go get the food. It's not my problem that you're so tired. It's not my fault that that's the system. You can actually sit and listen and say, you know what, I bet you we can come up with a different idea.
We appreciate your interest in becoming our next superintendent. Do you have any questions for us?
I mean, I have so many questions. First of all, you guys must be tired. How you guys doing? I'm sure I stand or sit between you and going home. Though it's a completely self-serving question, what are you looking for? This district, from what I can gather, you've had 3 superintendents in the last, let's say, 2-ish years. I could understand if you want somebody that's just going to calm the waters. And that makes perfect sense to me. That's not me. And so I guess the question is, what are you looking for the next 3 to 5 to 10 years? Because that would really help me. Not that I have any delusions that I'm going to go to the next round, but the question is, what do you want? Because that'll help me understand better what makes sense. If that's a fair question. It might not be. It's okay.
So in our district, we have really innovative programming that we're very, very proud of, such as Chinese immersion, Spanish immersion, our pathways that you probably are
Oh, yeah, no, it
familiar
sounds
with.
great.
Yeah. And we are passionate about those pathways. We want somebody who's going to continue on with that programming that we've implemented. And we don't want somebody, we don't think we want somebody who's going to come in and totally upend the apple cart. Mm-hmm. But as Mrs. Willis mentioned earlier, we did some community feedback sessions when we started this search, and feedback from the community was essentially 50-50 on that. The community was either saying we want somebody who's going to come in and totally change everything, or somebody who's going to recognize the good work that has been done in the past and continue with that. So to answer your question, we're not sure.
Sure.
We'll know it when we see it.
No, that's fair. No, and I appreciate that. And I would...
Or we won't. And we'll go back to the community.
I would hope and I would posit that you can do both. It is so wrong-headed to think that there isn't brilliance in this district, that there aren't wonderful and great things that are happening. I mean, all those magnet programs and all the different things that you're doing. But it also would be a dereliction of duty to say that things can't get better. And I think that there's a way that you can do both in a really thoughtful way. But it's helpful to hear that the community has those two things, because that whoever comes in needs to understand how to balance both of those. Yeah.
Other questions for us? Other things that we should know about you? We have
the
9
things.
minutes.
I have 9 minutes. It's great. There's an old Saturday Night Live skit where George Bush and Michael Dukakis were debating, and he says, you still have 8 minutes. He goes, you sure you can't take some of that back? No, I mean, look, for me, I'll say some more things about what I've done and why I want this. I've spent my entire career in service of students, but I've been very lucky that for the last 6 years, I've had the job that most people get kind of at the end of their career. It's a gold watch job. I run leadership for the City University of New York at Hunter College. It's amazing. I have a great life. But I miss and believe that there are ways to be of greater service in the world. And when I found out that Lansing was doing a real open search, when you were really saying to yourselves, we're going to go and be willing to look at people based on what they could do for us, not because they're part of the next up idea, I was overwhelmed. This district, about 11,000 kids, about 25 schools. You have about 75% students of color, about 17, 18% special ed, a rising ENL population. There's so many things that this district speaks to me and my experience in urban situations, especially New York, but that also there's this pride of place that you don't find in many places. This is a community that wants desperately for their district to do well and to do better. And it's rare for me to find that. And, everything I've done in my career is to always think big, is to always try different things. And this is a place that I think, graduation rates are in the mid-60s. You could be at 80, 85. Proficiency rates should be in the kind of, 50, 60, 70s. There's ways of doing that. And I think that it just is going to take some real thoughtful leadership of bringing everybody together to believe in that. And that's why I'm so just thrilled about the Lansing School District. It really, there's so much that's going for it, and I think that with the right leader, me or somebody else, you can really do that. And the work that I've been doing now with turnaround schools and with principals in New York and the district, we're seeing it work. We're increasing attendance rates, we're increasing graduation rates, we're doing all of this stuff. But it's time, I think, for me to be part of a community and to really move a system forward with the support of a city. And that's why I'm here. I rarely leave New York, and all of my conferences and speech gigs have been canceled for the next 2 months anyway. I even had tickets to the Final Four, and that's now canceled. But I want you to know that the reason why I'm here is because I think there's something really special here, and I think that my skill set of being able to be, and it sounds so trite, but a visionary leader, but somebody who can bring people with them through that idea and to see it to fruition, this is a special opportunity, and that's why I'm here. And I hope that I'm given the opportunity to help lead. So thank you very much.
Thank you again. Thank you for your interest. Again, members of our community, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know this was a long night. We'll see you back tomorrow, 6:15, 3 interviews, again, an hour each. And again, just as a reminder, we will be holding all deliberations next week on the 18th at what? Yes, please hand your feedback to Jay and Greg from MASB.
If large meetings are still allowed.
If large meetings are still allowed, we will see you tomorrow night. And at 9:26, we are adjourned.